The small frontier town lay bathed in the golden hues of late afternoon, the air heavy with dust and the scent of blooming wildflowers. In a modest wooden house at the edge of town, two sisters prepared for what promised to be the most talked-about event of the season: the arrival of the Apache warrior, a man whose reputation for strength, bravery, and honor had reached even the quietest corners of their town. The elder sister, Lila, moved with an easy grace, her long hair catching the sunlight as she adjusted her dress in the mirror. She was the picture of beauty and charm, her every movement seemingly designed to attract attention. Her deep green eyes sparkled with anticipation, certain that the warrior's first glance would fall upon her. "Of course he'll choose me," she said aloud, brushing a stray curl from her face. Who could resist? From the corner of the room, her younger sister Mara watched quietly. Mara was often overlooked, her features soft and unassuming, her presence gentle rather than commanding. She had learned long ago that her strength lay not in appearances, but in small acts of kindness and thoughtful observation. As she tied her hair back with a simple ribbon, she whispered to herself, "Perhaps he'll notice something more important than beauty." The sound of hooves drew their attention to the yard. The Apache warrior had arrived. Tall, broad-shouldered, and cloaked in the quiet authority of a man accustomed to command, he dismounted with a calmness that immediately silenced the whispers of the townsfolk gathered to greet him. Lila's heart leaped. She stepped forward, smiling and curtsying, expecting a warm look, a word of praise, perhaps even the spark of immediate attraction. But the warrior's gaze swept past her, barely pausing, his eyes searching the crowd. Lila faltered, confusion and pride warring within her. Meanwhile, Mara stood quietly by the doorway, clutching a basket of water for their father, who had come to meet the warrior as well. She did not seek attention, did not hope for admiration. And yet, the warrior's gaze finally settled on her, not with the heat of infatuation, but with curiosity and quiet acknowledgment. As he approached the house, Mara stepped aside to let him pass, but she offered a small smile, polite and warm. "Welcome to our town," she said softly. Her voice lacked the flourish Lila had perfected, but it carried honesty, a calm assurance that seemed to steady the warrior as if she were a steadying force in a world of expectations. Inside, Lila could barely contain her frustration. She had imagined a moment of triumph, a declaration of admiration, perhaps even a gentle compliment that would have all the townsfolk murmuring her name. Instead, she saw her younger sister, the one she had long dismissed as timid and plain, guiding the warrior through the house, offering water and explaining the layout of the small homestead. Every gesture Mara made was thoughtful, unassuming. Yet it drew the warrior's attention in a way Lila's beauty never could. By the time the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple, it was clear to all who watched that the Apache's interest lay not with the glamorous elder sister, but with the quiet, steadfast one who had been overlooked for so long. Lila's beauty had not failed, rather, it had been irrelevant. In Mara, the warrior saw patience, intelligence, and kindness, a depth of character that no charm or grace could imitate. For Mara, the attention was unexpected, and her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She had never imagined that she, so easily forgotten, could be seen in such a way. And yet, as the warrior's eyes met hers and a small, understanding smile crossed his face, she realized that sometimes true love did not seek the obvious, it discovered the heart. Hidden in plain sight. The following morning, the town was alive with whispers. Word had spread quickly. The Apache warrior had chosen to spend his time with Mara, the quiet and overlooked sister, rather than Lila, whose beauty had captured every heart in the region. Layla's cheeks burned with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation as she watched them from the edge of the garden. She had expected admiration, not invisibility. And yet, the warrior seemed entirely at ease in Mara's company. moving with a natural comfort that made Lila's frustration grow heavier with each passing moment. Mara, for her part, felt a strange combination of joy and unease. She had never experienced a tension like this, and the realization that the warrior had noticed her made her heart flutter. But alongside the excitement was the knowledge that she had to navigate this new attention carefully. She did not want to appear boastful or presumptuous. She only wished to be herself, quietly helpful and observant. The Apache warrior, whose name was Tayan, seemed to understand this instinctively. He did not overwhelm Mara with compliments or declarations, nor did he attempt to impress her with feats of strength or tales of conquest. Instead, he asked about her daily life, about her thoughts, and about the small ways she contributed to the household and the community. His questions were sincere, thoughtful, and patient, and Mara found herself opening up in ways she had never dared with anyone, not even her own family. Lila, unable to contain herself any longer, stepped forward with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Mara, why do you spend so much time with him? Don't you see he should be talking to me?" Her voice was sharp, tinged with jealousy, yet there was an underlying note of confusion. She had always believed beauty commanded attention, and now that assumption was being shattered before her very eyes. Mara turned toward her sister gently. "I am not trying to take anyone's place, Lila. I only wish to help him while he is here, and he seems to appreciate that." Her voice was calm, without accusation or defensiveness. Layla's eyes narrowed, but she could not find words to respond, for Mara's honesty and quiet confidence left her speechless. Tayn, noticing the tension, offered a small, respectful nod toward Mara, as if silently acknowledging her composure. "Do not worry about what others think," he said, his voice low and steady. "It is not appearances that matter most." His words struck Mara deeply. They were simple, yet they carried a truth that resonated in her heart. Value is not determined by what the world admires, but by what one quietly gives and shares. As the day unfolded, Mara found herself accompanying Tayan on small tasks, checking the horses, repairing a fence, and gathering herbs from the nearby woods. With every step, every shared smile, she felt a growing sense of connection. He was attentive without being overbearing, and she discovered that his laughter, though rare, was genuine and warm. In return, she offered him insights into the land and town life, little details that made his time in the community easier and safer. Meanwhile, Lila wandered through the garden, tossing flowers aside in frustration. Her reflection in the pond's surface stared back at her, and for the first time she felt the sting of humility. Beauty had not guaranteed admiration, charm had not guaranteed respect, and the warrior's preference for Mara was a lesson she could not ignore. As dusk approached, Tayan and Mara returned to the house, tired but quietly content. Mara could sense that a bond was forming, something deeper than friendship, something rooted in understanding and mutual respect. And though the world outside might still marvel at Lila's beauty, within the quiet of the homestead, something far more profound was taking root. The beginning of true love, discovered in the heart of the sister everyone had forgotten. The next morning the air carried an unusual tension. Lila had barely slept, her mind spinning with thoughts of Tayan and Mara. How could her younger, quieter sister captivate a man so strong and respected? She paced the garden, twisting her fingers around a ribbon, frustration simmering beneath the surface. The town had begun noticing the shift. Two whispers floated along the streets about the Apache warrior's preference for Mara. Pride and envy battled within her, leaving Lila restless and restless. Meanwhile, Mara awoke with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She had spent the previous day learning more about Tayan, sharing small tasks and quiet conversations, but now the day ahead promised something different. Today, he planned to take her on a ride into the surrounding hills to show her the expanse of land he had roamed. Mara's heart beat faster, but she reminded herself to remain composed. She did not wish to appear bold or daring. She simply wanted to be herself. When Tayan arrived, mounted on his horse, Mara noticed a faint smile on his usually serious face. "Are you ready?" he asked, his tone casual yet patient. Mara nodded, and he helped her onto the saddle. Lila, watching from the doorway, clenched her fists. She had imagined that the warrior would be dazzled by her elegance, but instead, she saw him offering careful guidance and reassurance to her sister, something that stirred a deep frustration within her. The ride began along a narrow trail, winding through groves of oak and towering cliffs. Tayan pointed out landmarks and hidden springs, sharing stories of his travels, while Mara listened intently, occasionally offering observations that made him pause and chuckle. He appreciated her insight, her quiet intelligence, and the way she observed the world with a depth that went unnoticed by most. Each moment they shared seemed to draw them closer, the air between them charged with unspoken understanding. Back in town, Lila's jealousy became harder to contain. She approached her father, who had come to watch the sisters, and complained bitterly, "Why does he ignore me? I am the elder, the beautiful one. Shouldn't that matter?" Her father sighed, his eyes gentle but firm. "Beauty alone is not what he seeks, Layla. Perhaps it is time you consider the heart, not just the face." The words struck her like a cold wind, but pride prevented her from fully accepting them. Meanwhile, Mara and Tayan reached a hidden valley, a quiet place untouched by townsfolk. Here, the world seemed suspended, the distant chatter of the town fading into the rustle of leaves and the whisper of the wind. Tayan dismounted first, offering Mara his hand as she stepped down from the horse. She noticed the way he looked at her, not with a superficial admiration reserved for beauty, but with a calm, attentive regard that seemed to see into her very soul. A sudden rustle in the bush startled them. Mara instinctively stepped behind Tayan, but he raised a hand to reassure her. From the shadows emerged a small, frightened animal, a fawn caught in a tangle of vines. Mara knelt, carefully freeing it, while Tayan watched silently, impressed by her gentle hands and calm demeanor. It was a simple act, yet in it lay the proof of the qualities he had already admired: patience, compassion, and courage. By the time they returned to the town, the sun was dipping behind the hills, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold. Tayan's respect for Mara had deepened, and Mara herself felt a warmth in her chest she had never known before. Lila, waiting for their return, could see the bond forming between them, and despite her protests and jealousy, a reluctant realization began to take root. This connection was not something she could break. As night fell, Mara lay in her bed, thoughts of the day spinning through her mind. She realized that Tayan's attention was not just admiration, it was a recognition of who she truly was, beyond appearances, beyond expectation. And in that realization, a new feeling took hold: hope, and the fragile beginnings of love that would soon grow stronger, challenging not only the world around her, but the assumptions that had long shaped her family and her town. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, but an uneasy tension had settled over the town. News had spread that a band of outlaws had been seen near the outskirts of the valley, threatening travelers and small settlements alike. The townsfolk whispered nervously in the streets, glancing toward Tayan's home, knowing that the Apache warrior would not ignore such a threat. Mara, aware of the danger, felt a mixture of fear and determination. She had grown to trust Tayan, and while she had never imagined facing real peril, she resolved to stand by him. Lila, on the other hand, flitted around the house in agitation, fussing over dresses and jewelry, convinced that appearances could still command attention even in the face of danger. Her concern, however, was more for herself than anyone else. Tayan gathered the few men willing to ride with him, explaining the situation in a calm, precise tone. Mara, without hesitation, asked if she could accompany him. Tayan's dark eyes met hers, assessing her courage. "It is not a place for the unprepared," he warned. But Mara's resolve did not waver. "I can help. I can learn." There was no arrogance in her words, only honesty and steady determination. With a small nod, he agreed, recognizing in her a bravery he had not expected, yet deeply admired. The ride to the valley was tense. The outlaws were skilled, their movements practiced, and Mara could feel the weight of danger pressing around them. Tayan stayed close, his presence a constant reassurance, but he allowed her to act where she could, offering guidance rather than shelter. Mara's quick thinking and attention to detail proved invaluable. She spotted hidden tracks and signs of movement that others overlooked. Slowly, the others began to see the worth of her quiet, steady mind. Meanwhile, back in the town, Layla fumed. She had expected Tayan to keep her company, to admire her beauty while he prepared for the threat. Instead, he had chosen Mara, placing trust and responsibility in her hands. Her frustration boiled into anger, and she began to whisper doubts to their father, trying to sow fear and uncertainty about Mara's capability. Yet even he, seasoned and wise, could not deny Mara's evident courage. The confrontation came at dusk. The outlaws had taken position near a ridge, intending to ambush travelers. Tayan and his small group approached cautiously, Mara observing the terrain, quietly advising on the best path to avoid detection. Her insight allowed the group to flank the outlaws unexpectedly. When the first skirmish erupted, Mara remained calm, assisting the wounded and providing information to Tayan that proved crucial. Each act, though small, revealed the depth of her courage, patience, and intelligence, qualities the elder sister's beauty could never match. By nightfall, the outlaws had been routed. The townsfolk hailed Tayan as a hero, yet he seemed more focused on Mara, ensuring she was unharmed and commending her bravery. She blushed at his quiet praise, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and something far deeper: connection, trust, and the first sparks of love that transcended admiration for outward appearances. Layla, however, could barely stand to witness the recognition Mara received. She had expected accolades, yet here was her sister, the one she had long dismissed, standing as an equal, a partner, and someone Tayan truly valued. Pride and envy tangled in her chest, leaving her restless and uncertain. As Mara returned home that night, tired but quietly triumphant, she caught Tayan's steady, approving gaze. "You were remarkable today," he said softly. Mara's chest tightened with emotion. "I only did what I could," she replied, trying to remain humble. Though her heart swelled with pride, for the first time, Mara understood something profound. Love and respect were built not on beauty or expectation, but on courage, kindness, and the quiet strength to act when it mattered most. And as she glanced at the stars twinkling over the hills, she realized that this was only the beginning, not just of their love, but of a journey that would test both her heart and the bond she had begun to share with the Apache warrior. The morning sun rose over the quiet town, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. The previous day's victory against the outlaws had brought a sense of relief, but it had also stirred tensions that could no longer be ignored. Whispers followed Mara wherever she went, and not all were kind. Some townsfolk admired her courage and quiet intelligence, while others, jealous or narrow-minded, grumbled that the Apache warrior had favored someone so plain over the beautiful Layla. Layla herself was a storm of conflicting emotions. Pride battled jealousy, and resentment gnawed at her. She had watched Mara grow in Tayan's eyes, admired for the very qualities she had long ignored. It hurt to see her sister celebrated for bravery and wisdom, while her own charm was dismissed as shallow. Determined to reclaim attention, she sought to display her own strength, but her efforts felt forced and hollow, a reminder that appearances alone could never match true character. Meanwhile, Mara moved quietly through her morning chores, her thoughts still lingering on Tayan. He had risen early, as was his habit, and had begun checking the horses and reinforcing the town's defenses. When he noticed Mara approaching, he offered a small nod, an acknowledgment of her presence without fanfare. His calm attention was comforting, yet it carried weight, the quiet, steady kind of recognition that Mara had come to treasure more than any words of flattery or admiration. "Tayan," Mara began, her voice soft but steady, "do you think the town will ever understand?" She gestured vaguely toward the street, where gossiping townsfolk exchanged glances and whispered behind hands. Tayan's dark eyes met hers. "They may not," he said simply. "But it is not their understanding that matters. What matters is truth, integrity, and courage. You possess these qualities, Mara. Others may notice them eventually, or they may not. Either way, it does not diminish who you are." Mara felt a warmth spread through her chest, the quiet comfort of being seen for who she truly was. "I only hope Lila will understand one day," she admitted. Before Tayan could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of town. A rider approached, breathless and frantic. "More outlaws. They've returned, and this time they've taken a hostage." The words sent a shiver down Mara's spine. Her heart skipped at the thought of danger, but she did not hesitate. She looked at Tayan, who was already reaching for his gear. "We must act," he said, his voice calm, resolute. Mara grabbed her own supplies and mounted her horse beside him. Lila, despite her protests, was forbidden from coming along. She had grown frustrated at being excluded, but the decision was final. The danger was not a place for someone unprepared, regardless of charm or beauty. The ride to the outskirts was tense and silent. Mara's hands gripped the reins, her eyes scanning the terrain for signs of the outlaws. Tayan rode beside her, confident and alert, offering instructions in measured tones. Mara followed, her mind sharp and steady, noticing details others might overlook when they reached the hiding place of the outlaws. Mara's instincts proved invaluable. She spotted a narrow path that allowed them to approach unseen. Using hand signals, she guided Tayan and the small group to the edge of the clearing where the captured townsfolk were held. With careful coordination, they freed the hostages and outmaneuvered the outlaws without unnecessary violence. Mara's calm reasoning and precise actions had saved lives and ensured a swift resolution as they returned to town. Tayan's steady gaze found Mara's. "You were incredible today," he said, his voice low, carrying both admiration and something deeper, a tenderness Mara felt in her chest. For the first time, the bond between them seemed unbreakable, forged in courage and quiet understanding. Lila watched from the distance, frustration and envy etched on her face. Yet even she could not deny the truth. Mara's bravery, wisdom, and quiet strength had earned Tayan's respect and his heart. And in that moment, Mara understood something profound. True love was never about beauty or appearances, but about the courage to act, the kindness to care, and the quiet strength to be oneself, even in the shadow of expectation. The days that followed the outlaws' defeat brought a calm that felt almost foreign to the town. Mara moved through her daily life with a quiet confidence, her bond with Tayan growing stronger with each shared moment. He no longer looked at her with mere curiosity. His gaze carried trust, respect, and a gentle warmth that Mara had never experienced before. Their relationship had begun as quiet admiration, but now it was evolving into something deeper, a connection built on shared courage and understanding. Tayan often included Mara in his daily routines, teaching her the skills he had mastered over years of living in the wild. She learned to read the land, to notice the subtle signs of approaching danger, and to handle tasks with precision and care. He never treated her as fragile or incapable. Instead, he treated her as an equal, and Mara responded with humility and determination. Each lesson strengthened not only her skills but also the bond growing between them. Lila, however, was restless and bitter. She had expected that time would tilt Tayan's attention back to her, but each day only solidified Mara's place at his side. Frustration gnawed at her, and her jealousy became more visible. She tried subtle manipulations, compliments cloaked in sarcasm, veiled criticism of Mara's abilities, but Tayan never wavered. His respect for Mara was steadfast, and he quietly but firmly ignored Lila's attempts to interfere. One afternoon, Mara accompanied Tayan to the river to check traps he had set for game. The sun glinted off the water, painting the scene with golden light. Mara's hands moved carefully, examining the traps, making small suggestions that Tayan accepted with a nod or a smile. "You are learning quickly," he said, his tone warm but serious. "It is not just skill I see in you, Mara, it is judgment, patience, and understanding." "That is rare." Mara's cheeks flushed at the praise. She had never thought of herself as remarkable, yet Tayan's words carried a weight that made her feel truly seen. Back at the homestead, Lila simmered with jealousy. She watched Mara return with a faint, satisfied smile, noting how Tayan's hand had briefly brushed Mara's as they crossed the river. Her own reflection in the water seemed to mock her. Beauty had not won him, and no display of charm could reverse the quiet bond that had been forming between her sister and the Apache. Warrior Dot, as the sun began to set, Mara and Tayan returned to the house. The world outside seemed to fall away as they shared a moment of quiet companionship. "I never thought I could feel so connected," Mara admitted softly. Tayan placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his touch warm but not overwhelming. "Connection is not born of appearances, Mara," he said gently. "It is born of trust, respect, and the courage to face life together." That evening, the town gathered for a small celebration, honoring the bravery displayed against the outlaws. Mara, modest as ever, quietly helped tend to the guests and offered guidance where needed. Tayan observed her from across the hall, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Even amidst the noise and chatter, their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them, a recognition that their bond was no longer hidden or fragile. Lila, watching from a corner, finally began to sense a shift within herself. The jealousy and anger were exhausting, and she could see that Mara's quiet strength had earned Tayan's admiration and love. It was a truth she could no longer deny. Slowly, grudgingly, she began to consider the idea that beauty alone did not command respect, that patience, courage, and sincerity could hold far greater power. Mara, unaware of Lila's internal struggle, simply felt content. For the first time, she could imagine a future where she was valued for who she truly was, where love was measured not by charm or appearance, but by the strength of heart and the depth of character. And as she watched Tayan from across the room, she knew that their journey together had only just begun, one built on trust, courage, and the quiet certainty that true love could flourish in the most unexpected places. The following week brought an unexpected challenge. A severe storm rolled over the hills, dark clouds blotting out the sun and driving wind and rain into the small frontier town. Roofs groaned under the weight of water, and streets quickly turned into muddy streams. Most townsfolk huddled indoors, but Mara and Tayan knew that the storm brought dangers beyond flooded streets, fallen trees, loose livestock, and travelers stranded on the roads. Tayan rose before dawn, checking his weapons and provisions. "We must ensure the town and the surrounding paths remain safe," he said quietly. Mara, without hesitation, volunteered to accompany him. She had gained confidence and skill in recent weeks, but this would be her first test in extreme conditions. Tayan looked at her with steady eyes, then nodded. "We will face it together," he said as they stepped outside. The storm hit in full force. Rain lashed against their faces, and wind threatened to knock them off balance. Mara clung tightly to her cloak, keeping close to Tayan as they moved toward the outskirts where the threat of danger was greatest. Despite the weather, Mara felt no fear, only determination. She had seen what courage meant, and she was learning that true strength was not about avoiding danger, but about facing it with focus and calm. Their first challenge came quickly. A tree had fallen across the main path, blocking the road and threatening to crush a wagon stuck beneath it. Mara and Tayan worked together to move the obstruction. Tayan lifted with skill and precision, while Mara directed him to leverage the fallen branches most effectively. Each decision she made was careful and measured, and her calm guidance saved the wagon and its occupants from harm. Back in town, Lila watched from a window, drenched in frustration and helplessness. She wanted to act, to claim attention, but the storm rendered her powerless. She could see Mara working alongside Tayan, solving problems with thought and courage, and each success Mara achieved made her jealousy tighten like a coil in her chest. The storm worsened, and reports of a stranded traveler reached Mara and Tayan. A young boy, caught on the far side of a swollen creek, was calling for help. Mara's heart quickened. "We must save him," she said urgently, scanning the rushing water. Tayan nodded, appreciating her decisiveness. Together, they crafted a plan, using ropes and careful footing to reach the boy safely. Mara steadied him, offering comfort, while Tayan ensured the path back was secure. The boy was safe, and Mara's courage and quick thinking had made the difference. By the time they returned to the homestead, drenched and exhausted, the storm began to ease. Mara's clothes clung to her, mud streaking her face and hands, yet she radiated a quiet triumph. Tayan looked at her, admiration and warmth shining in his eyes. "You were remarkable today," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Your courage, patience, and intelligence, these are qualities that cannot be taught. You have them naturally." Mara felt a flush of pride, but also a deep sense of connection to him. This was more than admiration. It was the recognition of shared values, trust, and the willingness to face the world together. Even in the midst of chaos, they had relied on each other, and their bond had grown stronger. Meanwhile, Lila, watching from the safety of the house, could no longer ignore the truth. Her jealousy had blinded her to her sister's strengths, and now she realized that beauty alone could not earn respect, admiration, or love. Slowly, begrudgingly, she began to reconsider her assumptions, wondering what it truly meant to be worthy of someone's heart. As night fell, Mara cleaned herself by the fire, her thoughts turning to Tayan and the day's trials. She understood something vital. Love was not about being noticed or admired superficially, it was about shared courage, kindness, and trust. And as she glanced at Tayan across the room, watching him quietly repair a saddle, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by more than attraction, by respect, understanding, and the quiet strength of hearts that had found each other against all odds. The following days were calm, but beneath the surface, emotion stirred like an unseen current. Mara and Tayan's bond had grown stronger after the storm, their trust in each other deepened by shared danger and quiet understanding. They moved through the town and surrounding hills as a team, each anticipating the other's needs, each learning the rhythms of the other's mind and heart. Lila, however, could not find peace. Her jealousy had shifted, twisting into a strange mixture of resentment and longing. She envied her sister's courage and the quiet admiration Tayan offered Mara, yet she could not deny a part of herself respected her sister's strength. Still, she felt compelled to act, hoping to regain some measure of attention or influence over Tayan. One afternoon, Mara accompanied Tayan to check on the livestock grazing in the far meadow. Lila, determined to insert herself, followed quietly from a distance, hoping perhaps to intercept or impress Taeyeon. Mara noticed her sister's presence immediately. She turned, offering a gentle but firm glance. "Lila, you should return home," Mara said softly. "It is not safe here, and Taeyeon and I can handle this." Lila's face tightened in frustration, but Mara's calm, composed tone left little room for argument. As they worked, Mara noticed subtle signs of trouble in the meadow-broken branches, disturbed soil, and the low growl of a hidden predator. Her heart skipped, recognizing the danger before Taeyeon even fully assessed it. "A wolf or perhaps more than one lies nearby," she warned, scanning the tree line. Taeyeon's eyes narrowed, his expression serious. Mara's attention to detail, her instinctive awareness, had proven invaluable yet again. Suddenly, a low growl cut through the air, followed by the snap of a branch. From the shadowed edge of the trees, a pair of wolves emerged, their eyes fixed on the herd. Mara instinctively positioned herself between the livestock and the threat, calling out to Taeyeon while keeping her movement steady and deliberate. Together, they coordinated a swift strategy, Taeyeon's strength and experience complementing Mara's insight and calm decisiveness. Lila, watching from the edge of the meadow, froze. Her attempt to insert herself had placed her in danger, and fear gnawed at her. She realized for the first time how courage and intelligence, not beauty or charm, truly mattered. Panic threatened to overtake her, but Mara's composed voice reached her even at a distance. "Step back, Lila. Stay safe." The wolves were driven off without harm, thanks to Taeyeon's skill and Mara's clear thinking. Breathing heavily, Mara looked at Taeyeon, and he offered a nod of admiration. "You handled that perfectly," he said, his tone calm but full of warmth. "Your mind is as strong as your heart." Mara felt a thrill of pride, tempered with humility, as she absorbed his praise. Later, as they returned to the house, Mara noticed Lila's lingering presence. For the first time, she felt a pang of compassion for her sister. "You see now," Mara said gently, "strength is not in appearances, nor in being noticed. It is in courage, in the quiet decisions that matter most, and in facing what comes with honesty." Lila's eyes flickered with acknowledgement, the first glimmer of understanding softening her jealousy. That evening, as Mara tended to the animals and Taeyeon repaired gear, a quiet sense of balance settled over the household. Mara understood that love was not simply admiration or attention, it was recognition of character, shared courage, and trust. Taeyeon's steady presence beside her reminded her that their bond was rooted in something far deeper than fleeting appearances. And Lila, though still wrestling with envy, began a slow journey toward self-reflection. She realized that her sister's courage and integrity could not be overshadowed by beauty alone, and that the path to respect, perhaps even love, lay in developing her own quiet strength. For Mara, the lesson was complete. True love was not claimed by charm or popularity, but discovered in the heart that dared to be honest, brave, and unwavering, even when the world overlooked it. Autumn arrived, painting the hills with warm shades of gold and crimson, but along with the beauty came a new test. A group of bandits had been reported in the neighboring valley, their raids threatening not only the town but the surrounding settlements as well. The town leaders called upon Taeyeon to help organize a defense, and Mara insisted on accompanying him. She had learned much in recent weeks about courage, about strategy, and about the quiet strength required to face danger, and she was determined to stand by him. Lila, hearing of the impending threat, felt a mixture of worry and jealousy. She wanted to help, to be included, but she also feared the danger. She watched as Mara prepared her gear, moving with steady efficiency, while Taeyeon adjusted weapons and secured the horses. Mara's calm competence filled the space with quiet authority. Lila's chest tightened. She could not deny that her sister had grown into someone remarkable. The ride to the valley was tense. Mara sat astride her horse, scanning the hills, noting every sound, every subtle sign of movement. Tayan rode beside her, impressed by her vigilance and insight. "You are quick to notice things others overlook," he said. "That makes all the difference." Mara felt a quiet pride, but also humility. She had not sought recognition, yet she now understood that her quiet observation and steady courage mattered more than appearances ever could. When they reached the bandits' camp, Mara and Tayan quickly devised a plan. Mara's sharp eye had noticed a narrow ridge that would allow them to flank the group without being seen. She explained her observations to Tayan, who nodded in approval. Together, they led a small group of townsmen along the ridge, taking the bandits by surprise. Mara's instructions were precise, her calm decisiveness guiding the others. During the confrontation, Mara noticed a young bandit about to strike a townsman unaware. Without hesitation, she intervened, stepping between them and using her voice to distract him long enough for Tayan to subdue the threat. Her courage, intelligence, and composure were evident to all, including Tayan, whose admiration deepened with every action she took. Back in town, the townsfolk celebrated the successful defense, but the true reward was the bond that had strengthened between Mara and Tayan. Mara felt the warmth of trust and mutual respect in his presence, a connection far deeper than words could express. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of their shared courage and partnership. Lila, however, remained on the outskirts of the celebration, her jealousy tempered now by reflection. She had watched her sister face danger with bravery and skill, and she could no longer claim that beauty or charm alone were enough. Slowly, she began to understand that true worth came from inner strength, courage, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. That night, Mara walked beside Tayan under the stars. "I never imagined that I could face so much and still feel calm," she said softly. Tayan smiled, his dark eyes reflecting the starlight. "Calm comes from trust, Mara, and courage comes from knowing you can rely on those around you and that they can rely on you." Mara's heart swelled with quiet joy. She realized that love was built on this foundation of trust, respect, and shared experience, not on appearances or fleeting attention. As the town slept peacefully, Mara felt a deep sense of belonging, not only to Tayan but to the life they were slowly building together. Lila, still thoughtful and restless, had begun her own journey toward understanding the true meaning of strength and character. And Mara knew that, whatever challenges lay ahead, she and Tayan would face them together, united by courage, honesty, and the quiet certainty that love could flourish in hearts overlooked by the world. Winter approached, dusting the hills and fields with frost, yet the cold could not touch the warmth growing between Mara and Tayan. Over the months, their bond had strengthened, tempered by shared challenges, quiet moments, and a steady recognition of one another's character. Mara had grown into a woman of courage and insight, her quiet strength now undeniable, and Tayan had come to rely on her not only as a companion, but as an equal partner in every sense. Town had also begun to adjust to the change. Mara was no longer the overlooked sister. Her deeds had earned admiration, and Tayan's affection for her was clear for all to see. Even Lila, though still grappling with her pride, could not ignore the truth. Her younger sister had proven herself worthy in ways that beauty alone never could. Slowly, begrudgingly at first, Lila began to let go of jealousy and embrace admiration, recognizing the power of inner strength and courage. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Tayan led Mara to a quiet clearing near the river, a place where the world seemed to fall away. Snowflakes drifted softly, settling on the branches and the frozen ground. Tayan took Mara's hands in his eyes reflecting the depth of his feelings. "Mara," he said, his voice low and steady, "from the moment I first saw you, I knew there was something different about you, something no beauty could capture, something rare and true. You are brave, wise, and kind. You see the world clearly, and you act with the courage I have come to rely on. You are my heart, Mara, and I wish to share all my days with you." Mara's chest tightened with emotion. She had never imagined hearing words so honest, so heartfelt. "Tayan," she whispered, I feel the same. I never expected to be noticed, much less loved. But with you, I feel seen, truly seen. And I know that whatever comes, we will face it together." The two embraced, the snow falling gently around them, as if the world itself had paused to witness the union of hearts that had been overlooked and underestimated. Mara felt a deep, unshakable certainty. Love, when rooted in respect, courage, and understanding, could weather any storm and endure beyond appearances. Back in the town, Lila watched from a distance, her eyes softening as she saw the bond between her sister and Tayan. Pride and envy gave way to reflection. She understood now that admiration was earned, not given freely, and that true love like courage and integrity was not found in charm or superficial beauty. Slowly, she approached Mara and Tayan, offering her own quiet blessing. "Mara, you have shown me what truly matters," she said softly. I am happy for you." Mara smiled, gratitude and warmth filling her chest. "Thank you, Lila. It means a great deal." Tayan nodded in acknowledgement, and the moment, though brief, carried a profound weight. The sisters, once divided by envy and expectation, had begun to bridge the gap through understanding and acceptance. As the first snow of winter settled over the town, Mara and Tayan walked side by side, their hands entwined. They spoke little, for words were unnecessary. The connection between them was evident in every glance, every shared smile, every quiet moment of understanding. They had faced danger, adversity, and doubt together, and through it all, their bond had only grown stronger. In that peaceful evening, Mara realized that life had a way of revealing the heart that mattered most, often in ways the world could not see. True love had chosen her not for beauty or charm, but for the courage, compassion, and quiet strength she had carried all along. And as she looked up at the stars twinkling above the snowy hills, she knew with certainty that she had found her place not in the spotlight, but in the heart of the Apache warrior who saw her as she truly was. The town would remember the beautiful sister, as beauty is always noticed. But history and hearts would remember Mara, the quiet, forgotten one, who had captured love, respect, and admiration not through appearances, but through the strength of her heart. Asterisk.